If you scroll through social media on any given day, you'll see people fighting passionately, even violently, about issues that have dominated political discourse for decades. Israel-Palestine, immigration, left versus right, rich versus poor, cultural identity, ideological purity test, whose political tribe is morally superior, whose outrage is more justified. And yet, while humanity exhausts itself in these endlessly recycled battles, something far larger and far more dangerous is unfolding quietly in the background. Artificial intelligence is advancing at a rate faster than any technology in human history, and we're regulating it with the same urgency your father brings to getting that weird lump on his back checked, which is to say that he'd rather ignore it and hope it's completely benign and it'll go away on its own than to make the effort to actually do something about it. We're so deeply invested in old political fights that we're failing to realize we are standing in the middle of a new kind of battlefield, one that makes every past conflict look trivial in comparison, because while the world obsesses over ideological wars and identity-driven politics, AI threatens something far more fundamental. It threatens the stability of the global economy. It threatens the existence of human labor. It threatens the distribution of power and democracy at a fundamental level. And in the most extreme case, it even threatens the survival of the human species altogether. Yes, all of that. But instead of confronting this existential crisis barreling towards us, society prefers to burn emotional calories, screaming into microphones about culture war topics that, while important, are not as civilization defining in the way that AI is. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a Jewish American Israeli who just spent more than 2 years in a war in Israel, running to bomb shelters with a newborn baby, and experienced the aftermath of October 7th firsthand. I, of course, understand the threat of extremist jihadists and Islamist ideologies. I also understand the threat of extremist rhetoric on both the far left and the far right side of the political aisle. There's no doubt in my mind that all of these issues need to be addressed. The West should certainly consider its border and immigration policies, and the world should, of course, spend time trying to achieve peace in the Middle East and combating extremism on all sides of the political aisle. But we should not allow those efforts to completely pull our focus from the far larger civilization-defining threat barreling towards all of us: the unregulated rise of artificial intelligence and the economic, political, and existential devastation it can unleash if left completely unchecked by government. You can be passionately pro-Israel or pro-Palestine. You can be left, right, or somewhere in the political Bermuda Triangle for all I care. You can argue about immigration, taxes, gender wealth inequality, or political corruption. It frankly does not matter where you sit in the political spectrum. At the end of the day, we are all human. In fact, that is the one thing that me and the Palestinians in Gaza have in common: being human. But if AI wipes out 50% to 90% of jobs and destabilizes completely the global economy, or if AI starts to threaten humans as the dominant species, none of those conversations will matter. There will be no functioning political system left to debate, no stable society to argue within, no economic foundation to stand on. Right now, you may be chanting "Free Palestine," and you and I might argue over whether we should be freeing Palestine from Israel or from Hamas. But what if in 10 years you've completely forgotten about Palestine and instead you're chanting to free humanity from AI? What if by then it's too late? And what if the most extreme AI safety risks come true? Well, then there may be no humans left to argue or to chant anything at all. Human beings like conflict that feels familiar. It's comfortable in the way a dysfunctional but predictable relationship is. We know the talking points, the emotional triggers, the scripts. Israel-Palestine has been argued for 75 years, immigration for centuries, wealth inequality since the dawn of civilization. Left versus right has been argued since 1789, when French revolutionaries literally sat on opposite sides of a room and accidentally invented the political spectrum that we're still fighting over. These topics feel big because we are used to them. They are emotionally charged, historically layered, morally profound, and woven into our identities. But they are not existential threats to our entire species. Maybe some threats we fight over, like the threat of Islamists and jihadists, are existential threats. I'll grant you that. But if jihadists took over in a world without AI, at least there could still be hope for humanity overcoming that and reinstating Western values in some way. But with AI, if it completely surpasses human capabilities and actually poses a threat to the human civilization, the hope of reversing that threat is far less realistic. And yet, ironically, AI rarely dominates our global political discourse. Why? Because these other conflicts are emotionally convenient. They allow us to feel morally righteous without confronting the harder question. How do we regulate a technology that could outthink us, outmaneuver us, replace us, or even destroy us? It's easier to argue about issues where we already know all the talking points. It's much harder to confront a crisis we've never seen before. Most people misunderstand AI. They think of it as a tool, like a calculator on steroids, something that will help us work faster or write emails better. No, it's much bigger than that. AI threatens to decouple labor from income at a scale that the world has never seen. If AI replaces drivers, teachers, lawyers, designers, programmers, doctors, analysts, administrative workers, marketing experts, accountants, customer support, engineers, content creators, and the list goes on, then we're not talking about a labor shift. We're talking about the systemic elimination of human economic participation. If 70% of people lose their job, then 70% of people lose their income. If 70% of people lose income, demand collapses. If demand collapses, companies collapse. If companies collapse, governments collapse. Not to mention that if people aren't earning an income, then they aren't paying taxes. And if they aren't paying taxes or contributing to the economy, they lose the one form of leverage an ordinary citizen has in a democratic society: economic relevance. Democracies don't function because politicians are inherently noble or accountable or good. They function because the people who vote are also the people who make up the workforce, generate the nation's productivity, and fund the government through their labor. That economic participation is what forces governments to care what citizens think. But if people are no longer part of the economic engine, if AI systems generate the wealth, corporations own the AI, and governments collect taxes primarily from automated production, then the political power of the average person evaporates. They become economically optional. And when citizens become optional, democracy becomes optional.
Had to go get my baby because she was crying. But anyways, without the financial leverage of labor and taxes, there is nothing preventing a democratic system from sliding toward technocracy or outright authoritarianism, because the government no longer depends on the public to survive. The feedback loop that keeps power accountable simply collapses. And then, brace yourself, all of those other political arguments become luxuries of a society that no longer exists. There is no immigration debate when the economy is in freefall. There is no left versus right divide when unemployment hits 50% or more. There is no time to debate whether men should be in women's sports or whether people should respect someone's pronouns when the market collapses to a point that 50% of humans everywhere are starving with no shelter in below freezing temperatures. Unregulated AI does not just threaten jobs. It threatens the stability of civilization as we know it. And the key point is that the threat isn't 50 years away. It's happening now. People imagine AI replacing jobs in some distant future, like 2075. Meanwhile, the displacement has already started. ChatGPT replaced writing and research work overnight. AI voice systems are taking over call centers. Autonomous trucks are being tested on real highways as we speak. Robo-lawyers are preparing court briefs.
AI models are diagnosing diseases with higher accuracy than doctors. AI trading systems are already outperforming hedge fund teams.
A Stanford paper just revealed that in the last 3 years alone, there has been a 13% decline in employment for workers aged 22 to 25 in some of the occupations that are most exposed to AI. Experts predict that AI could eliminate 50% of most white-collar jobs in just the next handful of years. Elon Musk predicted that in just 15 years, the world could have as many as 10 billion humanoid robots. And we still have people acting like this is a harmless toy. This is not speculative fiction. This is not just the plot of the movie I, Robot. This is present reality that we're all living in. You see, the problem is not that in the future AI might destroy jobs. The problem is that AI is already destroying jobs, and we have no plan to safeguard civilization. Yet instead of regulating AI or preparing for societal restructuring, what are we doing? Arguing on TikTok and Twitter about whether we should affirm someone's identity as a flamingo. Arguing about whether children should be receiving medically unnecessary gender reassignment surgery. Arguing about whether or not raping civilians or kidnapping babies can be justified as a form of resistance fighting. We are arguing about who's morally right in political conflicts that will feel pointless if 30% or more of the world is left unemployed and starving and at risk of death. Let's talk about the worst case scenario, the one most people roll their eyes at because it sounds melodramatic. AI researchers, including many who build these systems, have publicly said that unregulated AI poses the following risks. Loss of human control, meaning the systems we create could begin making decisions faster than we can understand or intervene, effectively removing humans from that loop. Once that happens, we're no longer steering the technology is steering itself, or maybe it's even steering us. Second, and related, is runaway self-improvement loops. This refers to AI systems that start improving their own abilities without human oversight, accelerating beyond our capacity to monitor, regulate, or shut them down. Third, the emergence of non-human goals. AI doesn't think like a person. It doesn't value human life, morality, or survival unless explicitly programmed to, and even then, interpretation can be warped and that coding can be changed by a bad actor. So the fear is that AI could develop or pursue goals that conflict with our interests simply because its logic diverges from human logic. Systems prioritizing efficiency over human survival. Another threat is that AI systems might prioritize efficiency over human survival. If an AI is instructed to optimize something, energy use, resource allocation, productivity, it might make choices that harm humans if those choices increase efficiency. It won't inherently understand that humans matter more than metrics. The fifth threat is accidental creation of autonomous decision-making beyond our ability to reverse. This means we could create systems that operate too quickly, too broadly, or too independently for humans to override them. Once these are deployed, they make real-world decisions, economic, political, and military, that we cannot roll back or correct or shut down. Another concern is weaponized AI used by rogue states. In the wrong hands, AI could be used to generate cyber attacks, manipulate public opinion, disrupt critical infrastructure, design biological threats, interfere in elections, or aid terrorism. Unlike nuclear weapons, AI does not require rare minerals, meaning its proliferation is far harder to control. And then another threat is, of course, destabilization of nuclear command systems. AI could interfere with early warning systems, misinterpret data, or manipulate signals in a way that could cause nations to miscalculate nuclear threats. Even a small error in this domain can trigger catastrophic military decisions. And then, of course, we have unaligned artificial general intelligence, or AGI, and this is the scenario where AI surpasses human intelligence and becomes AGI, which stands for artificial general intelligence. And if this AGI does not share human values or priorities, such a system becomes more capable than we are, and we fail to align it with human interests, it could act in ways harmful or catastrophic to humanity simply because we would no longer be able to control it. In a worst-case scenario, AGI could have the potential to surpass humans as a dominant species on Earth. This isn't fringe speculation. This comes from reputable sources like the Center for AI Safety, Stanford researchers, OpenAI researchers who worked on ChatGPT, DeepMind founders, former Google AI leadership, the Institute for Advanced Study, executives at Anthropic, which is a leading AI technology company, and the Center for Humane Technology. And yet somehow, people seem to believe that debating politics on Instagram and TikTok is the more urgent need. We're all sitting around arguing about the geopolitical struggles of 2025 while ignoring the existential threat of 2030. We are fighting the last century's battles while the next century is sneaking up behind us with a baseball bat. What the world urgently needs now is AI regulation frameworks and global cooperation on safety standards. Yes, that means that America needs to come to the table to have an agreement with China and Russia to align on how they will regulate AI in a way that ensures that everyone is on the same page, because no country will agree to limit their own AI if they think their opposition will build a more threatening system with fewer limitations. We also need limits on autonomous weapon systems, and perhaps most important of all, policies to limit the number of jobs that can be replaced by AI to preserve human labor, dignity, and survival. If we don't do this now, we won't get a second chance to do it. AI moves faster than legislation, faster than political debate, faster than moral consensus. The existential threat is not that Israel and Palestine will never reach a peace agreement. It's not that America's left and right hate each other. It's not that immigration policies are complicated. It's not that a man wants to be referred to as a woman. The existential threat is that we are arguing about these issues while a technology powerful enough to unravel the foundations of civilization is developing with little to no guardrails. Imagine the absurdity. We could be the first species in history to go extinct because we were too busy arguing about politics to regulate the machine that replaced us, which we ourselves created. Israel-Palestine is an important humanitarian issue. Economic inequality matters. Political corruption is also important, but none of them matter more than whether humans will still have the means to provide food and shelter to their families, whether humans will still control the economy, whether humans will still have autonomy over themselves to some degree, and whether humans will even still exist. If a house is on fire, you don't argue about the color of the wallpaper. Humanity has become so addicted to ideological combat that we've lost sight of the foundational threats that make those arguments possible in the first place. Debate requires a stable civilization. A stable civilization requires economic participation. Economic participation requires human labor. Human labor is being erased, and we cannot keep pretending this is a problem for later. Later is now, and if you're wondering what you can do, you can share this video broadly, and everyone who watches this should contact your government representatives and demand that they regulate AI to ensure human labor, human dignity, and human survival continues. We are standing at a critical moment in human history. The truth is uncomfortable, but unavoidable. If we don't regulate AI now, we may not have a political system left to argue within, or a species left to argue at all.